Hello everyone. Today we're going to talk about the actual changing of stats and stuff. Now the dirty little secret about my video is we're going to talk about taking a generic enemy and scaling it. We're not going to really change the base stats too much because this is the basic grunt. I'll probably make another separate video about actually updating all of the stats because that's where it gets extremely complicated. But we are going to talk about how you can balance a monster without constantly shifting the stats around. And by adding a few abilities, we're taking away a few abilities. We're going to talk about the cultist today. I have an Excel sheet here that kind of generically calculates damage, turn survival. It's not obviously going to be exact because in all reality, your situation will actually determine combat hardness more times than the actual monster itself. And we'll talk about that in part 3. This is obviously part 2. Changing some of the stats, HP, AC, and all that stuff, chance to hit. And we'll be using the cultist as I said. I'll be flashing up pictures of the cultist I was updating. So we're going to go from level 1 to level 9. I did that in my campaign. You can obviously keep going higher, but you can kind of see the generic path I was doing and the reasoning behind all of it. Before we get any further, I will try to find a way to get all these pictures and the Excel file available to you so you can mess around with them or just have them downloaded. I'm going to read the first level cultist to you now so we can see what changes throughout all of the levels. Cultists used to have AC of 12. Well, not used to. This is the base stat. AC of 12, HP 9, Speed 30, never changes. Speed never changes. Strength 11 plus 0, Dex 12 plus 1, Con 10 plus 0, Int plus 0, Wisdom plus 0, Charisma plus 0. Skills we don't really care about. Deception, Religion. Passive Perception is 10. Languages, doesn't matter, common. Dark Devotion, advantage on saving throws against being charmed and frightened. We never get rid of that. And then the scimitar attack is a plus 3 to hit, reach 5, 1d6 plus 1. That's perfectly fine for level 1 characters. Once you're level 1, level 2. Once you hit level 3, that's pretty much a joke. That's probably usually one-shot territory. We're getting hit by Shatter and they all die. Cultists don't really get past level 2 and pose any threat, to be honest. So here we are in the Excel sheet. I just want to go over a few things before I start rambling very quickly. This is the same enemy fight tab, which means it's just all one style of enemy. The number of enemies, so we get on my Excel sheet, you get up to 12, 1, whatever. We're going to stick with 8 at level 3 because this is actually going to be the only enemy we're going to throw at the party for now. And obviously the turn survival is going to calculate the damage. So yes, we'll talk about how the heroes have a lower turn survival than the enemy. How's this balanced? We'll kind of give you sneak peeks of that in this video. Total enemy HP, total party HP. I balanced this off of a fighter, paladin, wizard, and then a rogue. Things may not be exact depending on your party, or maybe I give them extra AC somewhere, but for the most part, this is where all of your people should generically be throughout all of the levels. I don't know how magic heavy you go. I don't know how much home brewing you did. I try to keep everything pretty darn standard. He's dual wielding a weapon. That's why he gets a D10. And that's why he has only 16 AC. Now, cultist. I kept the AC the same. You didn't really get that much better to hit anything, so we don't want to get the AC higher. Everyone still got pretty much a 5 to hit, maybe even a 4 in your campaign. So you want to try to keep that around 60% to hit because you get one attack. You want to make sure they land more times than they don't. HP, I did almost double though. I went from 9 to 16. Why? Level 3. Like I said, you get things like Shatter. You may have like Fiery Hands, right? 9 HP, even the 12 really doesn't do much. We probably want to give that 16. It might be 2 to 3 attacks per cultist. But like I said, if you have some AoE control where you have some bursts like a rogue, you can probably start knocking off a cultist or 2 per turn. And your combat may be only 3 to 4 turns. And obviously, as cultists drop, hero survivability goes up, enemy damage goes down. These guys have a plus 5 to hit themselves, so most likely if they're focusing your tanks, they're well below 50% and just around 50%, if not a little over, for your squishier people, but that's why you don't really want them in the front. Now, I do have 8 enemies. It's a 2-to-1 ratio. That's why you need to decide. You can't really advantage too much, and you can't have everyone on top of your party to begin with. We'll talk about that in part 3. Or, your heroes may get obliterated. If the round starts, all 8 cultists can attack at once, and they can knock down, like, your... Oops. They can knock down your wizard or something. Because at the bottom, we have turn survival. So pretty much your frontliners and your rogue with maybe uncanny dodge can all survive one turn if all 8 were gang up on them. not a chance for the wizard, right? Unless they got shield, bumped out to 17, probably don't get hit, which they also have. So like I said, this may not really be the same, but your party has way more utility than just standard attacks than obviously the enemy does. A +5 modifier to hit. It's still a scimitar, but we did go to a damage die of 3. That really kind of ups the average damage, and you can really start to feel that. Like if you roll a 5, you can do 8 damage. Ouch. But like I said, once again, it's only a 5 to hit. You may have uncanny, second wind, lay on hands, all that good stuff. Still just 1 attack, no additional damage. So that's that. You're going to see something. You're going to see I got rid of something mid-video. I'm just going to keep getting rid of this little box. Should be the only time you saw that. It's applicable in the party fight, not here. So that's my level 3. Hopefully when I do this video, I should have an image on the right side of the screen here so you can see the numbers a little better. What you're going to notice is I'm not really ever going to change the pure stats of the creature. And the reason for that is it can take a lot of work to just keep track of all your saving throws and stuff. And remember, these are your base grunts. Later, like level 7, level 9, I really just like to roll a d20 and take that number for saving throws. It saves a lot of math, and it doesn't slow down combat. Now, you can manipulate, because you're going to obviously notice these people HP go up and up and up. So in all reality, I could have said, well, their con's a +1 modifier now. If you want to keep track of that, go ahead. You are the dungeon master. You can assign HP at will and not have it match your con modifier. You're the DM. Do what you want. Level 5 is a tricky level because this is a big power spike, but you're still in that weird world where if you make your enemies a little too hard, you still don't have the most options. So the AC does go up too, because for the most part, your heroes have gotten an ASI and a proficiency bonus, so they're pseudo keeping with the chances to hit of the enemy. So we're still keeping that. If you had a 50% chance at level 3, you're probably going to have a 50% chance now. However, your class should obviously have other ways to either A, deal more damage, or B, improve your chance to hit, such as like a guided strike or something. So as we said, AC to 14, HP to 25. We actually didn't go too terribly much higher. And the reason for that is it gets a little weird around level 5. In reality, if you have like AoE blaster casters in your group, you may have to either do better positioning or you are going to have to ratchet up the HP. Because obviously if you put 8 of these guys together and a fireball goes off doing 27 damage, 5 fail, your fight's done, right? And that's why you really can't have just one generic enemy at level 5. Now we still have 8, which may actually be appropriate with like 2 other big guys distracting. Because remember, these are the main grunts. The only reason why at level 1, level 3, we kept them as the main enemy is there's just not a lot of options. And obviously at level 3, you could actually introduce like cultist fanatics and other stuff. Just for the ease of this video, we assume they were the main enemy, 1 to 3. But now that we're level 5, you should be throwing in probably challenge 3s or at least a couple challenge 2s to spice up your combat. Because if you have just generic sword wielders, they're going to get destroyed. There's going to be no reason not to cast your spells and just blow the load because they know there's nothing else behind it. So at level 5, you should be introducing a mixed enemy composition. That's why we kept the HP a little lower. We only give them +1 to hit because for the most part, the ACs probably haven't gone up in your party too terribly much, so you don't really want to get that hitting that much more. Damage die is still a scimitar. Damage modifier is still a +3. They do get 2 attacks though, and that's where these guys do become deadly. That's where there may be a bigger guy on the field, but you really don't want to ignore the grunts because they get 2 swipes, so they could actually do some serious damage. And as you see, the survivability is actually below a turn pretty significantly for these guys now. The fighter's still at 1.1 just because of the AC alone. But, you know, now your Pally may not be able to tank as much because he's still two-handing. He doesn't have the AC, and now 2 attacks are coming against him. That means more chances for criticals. If you're getting advantaged on, it's just a lot. So the second attack, without actually really increasing the damage or the chance to hit too much, is going to draw a little more attention. But at the same time, still relatively easy to hit them. The HP, like I said, you got a nice sneak attack. You may have a smite. You may have even, if you don't want to blow a fireball, lightning bolt, hypnotic pattern would be a good one. Maybe not against cultists because I believe that's charm. They would get advantage. But things to control, maybe like a fairy fire for your party to get advantage to just always hit all of their attacks. Or you could do an entangle to keep them trapped, a 3 to 4 guys trapped, so only half of them could advance, you know. So your party may actually have to use spells to just delay or burst them, which allows your bigger, badder enemies to do what they want to do. So that's where level 5 we start introducing the idea of newer enemies to help complement these guys. These guys are really just kind of like, I don't want to come up with 8 unique different enemies because that's a lot of stat bars to keep track of. I want maybe 2 to 3 enemies max. These guys' stat blocks are really easy to remember, so we just have them generically, and then I have 2 actual new stat blocks. So this one you may be able to memorize or just put it back on like a post-it note or something. Like literally these might be the only stats you need. And you go, they have a dex +3 because of the damage modifier, so they get a +3 to saving throw. All the other saving throws are a straight d20 roll. You're never looking up constant math. You know they get a +3 to dex because they get +3 damage. Like I said, you can keep that on a real small note so you can have your books or other stuff open with your real big monsters. That's the benefit of having simplistic stats on a monster, because you're not constantly going, oh wait, let me look up that saving throw, charisma, okay. Oh, you want to do wisdom? Oh my gosh, wisdom. It's a lot easier for your main grunt unit to have just usually straight dice rolls and rather simplistic stats. It makes the fights go quicker and also makes your players kind of understand their role in the combat. Level 7. And as you notice, as we get higher and higher, you'll notice the turn survival get pulled further apart. And the main reason for that is because the more you get, the more utility you get. You have Indomitable, you have Action Surge. I mean, you've always, but I'm just saying, like, you get a lot more options. More lay on hands, more smites, higher crit chances, spells that can control more and do more damage. So really, don't be too deceived by the number getting wider. You have many more ways to inflict damage or control. And in theory, your players' ACs are probably getting better and stuff. Now, once you do get to a higher level, though, you may be introducing bigger bads. You can just reduce this to 6. And as you saw, the turn survival went to 5 on the heroes and went to 4.5. So in all reality, maybe 7 may be an actual happy medium. It's technically a full turn over, which really isn't that bad. Let's check the stats, and you'll kind of understand why. Yeah, okay, that's not terrible. AC is 15. It's a whole nother level. Just give them a 5% more chance to live. Nothing too crazy. HP went from 25 to 36, 11 more, but you have level 4 spells now. And like I said, the sneak attack's gone up. You've gotten more chances to hit, potentially. If you give out magic items, maybe this around the time you give out a magic item, there's a lot more ways to hit these guys. And that's why you may also want to reduce it to 7 or 6. Just because they have gotten a little fatter in the HP department, you may not exactly want to have like 8 semi-hefty HP guys and a big bad. Because, I mean, all reality, 36 HP is pretty good. It may take about 3 attacks to drop one of these guys, depending on dice roll. And that is a while. Like, we won't joke. We won't mess around. 3 attacks for 1 grunt could be a bit. Sometimes that's the way luck goes. Or who knows, your rogue gets a sneak attack and pretty much one-shots a dude, and you're like, well, okay, like, that's cool. Like, that's that. Can always happen. You have to always determine and factor luck. Once you get to level 7, your party should have a little more options to help overcome bad luck on a regular basis. At lower levels, it's a little harder to overcome because you're at literally a lack of spells, and B, a lack of abilities. At level 7, it should open up the floodgates just a little bit for your party. So as we said, AC 15 now, not 14. HP 25 to 36. We haven't increased attack modifier, and the reason for that is these guys may live a little longer, so you don't actually want them to have an insane plus chance to hit. Damage die did go to an 8, and the damage modifier went to a 4, so that actually went up. So they don't necessarily hit more, but they do hit harder, which matters because it still keeps an emphasis on killing them. It's just they may not hit as frequently as they used to. Thus, you may be able to get away with a little bit more greed but not focusing them. But trust me, if you land 2d8s plus 4, that could be about 18 damage, which, you know, it's about a fourth of this dude's health. So definitely, I mean, of the wizard, and I think this HP was wrong, actually. Regardless, doing about 15 damage is really good just for one guy, especially if you have 7 more. You don't want these guys to swarm you, so you still have to control. They still have 2 attacks. Nothing else changed. We're just slowly incrementing that. The dex save is now +4, but you can always tell that by the damage modifier. I'm still not changing, in my personal opinion, for a basic grunt stat. We will eventually talk about taking a higher tier or a very lower tier monster and ratcheting up everything on them for maybe like a single monster encounter or like maybe a 2. Sometimes that's needed to increase all stats, but in this scenario, these guys are not the big bads. They are not a huge boss fight. I think keeping your grunts almost as vanilla as possible is one of the best things you can do. So that's their stuff. They're still deadly. You still got to pay attention to them, but they can be handled pretty darn easily. And we're finally at level 9. Level 9, you get some 5th level spells now on your wizard. Yeah, the HP was the same. That's okay. It didn't really change too much in the last one. I was just trying to generically keep cranking people up. Yeah, the wizard's HP was technically incorrect in the last one on 7, but it doesn't really change the matter too much. Wizards are more about the spells than obviously their HP, so not a huge thing. We're at level 9. I reduced the enemy number to 6 now. And the reason why I reduced it to 6 is we are at 42 HP. Now, that's still within the realm of getting Cone of Cold and dying. But I don't like assuming that every creature is going to fail and the players are going to roll average to higher damage on their AoE spells. And I also don't like to assume I'm not going to be responsible enough to not spread these dudes out. If you're going to clump your party a lot, you're just going to have to give a lot of HP because AoEs are going to shatter your party. If you find ways to either have friendly fire happen or only 2 to 3 of these guys get hit, much, much better. So AC 16, it's level 9 now, proficiency went up. It's a big deal. So now they have 16, 42 HP. I did give them one more chance to hit on their attack modifier, just increase that deadliness. Now I did go down to a d6 on the damage die and keep it at 4 damage modifier. You might be saying, why? Well, we have brute dice now. And what the brute dice is going to do is simulate a great sword. I'm still going to say it's scimitar. Do what you will. You can say they have great swords. You know, no skin off my bones. So now they're going to do 2d6 plus 4. All that's really going to do is just create a much more average damage. It's going to give you a much more consistent, maybe 8 to 9 damage per hit. For example, a d8 plus 4 was obviously 12 on the max end. This is 16 on the max end. But on the low end, it is 6. On the low end of d8 plus 4, it's 5. So what we're really doing is just averaging by a couple of damage points in there. And criticals can be pretty brutal with a greatsword. Like if you roll a 4 and a 5, that obviously goes 18 plus 4. It's 22 damage. That's a fourth of a fighter's or the pally's HP. Yikes. Like that's a lot of damage. Criticals with a greatsword can be extremely painful because they usually statistically average out pretty well. So as you can see, damage on hit, that means if both attacks were land, they're going to do 22 damage average, which is about a fourth of most people's HP. Third here, half there. They can hurt. And that's why we also reduced the number. Because with a couple of bad cases of luck or saving throw, these guys can actually last a while. So you probably don't want 8 swarming. And also at level 9, you want to bring out fun, big, bad monsters. So in all reality, you may actually only want these guys at like maybe 5. Like maybe you don't want too many of these. Just sprinkle these guys in. And you got your core big monsters. The real question for this is you're going to have to figure out how many big monsters you want to add, and that's going to obviously affect the number. Maybe 4 is appropriate. Maybe not to this Excel sheet, but maybe in your battle. You're like, you know what? I like 4 of these dudes at this. They can do some nice chip damage. You're looking at it, go, okay, you know, they can do 9 damage per turn to number 1 if they hit. You know, they can, they couldn't survive 1 turn if all of them ganged up on them. They could barely survive, and it's not really a problem for the frontliners. So to you, that may be perfect. You're like, perfect. The frontliners aren't really bothered by them, but the back row people are kind of like, I don't know. Like, I don't want to deal with them. That may be the perfect balance for you. Maybe 5's the perfect balance. 2 to 3 of them occupy them. 2 to 3 wrap around. Maybe a big guy chases them. You know what I mean? You have to find your balance in your party, and that's ultimately how you're going to change monster stats, how much HP you give. If your party's not very good at fighting, you may want to dumb everything down. I don't mean dumb as insulting, just, you know, like, instead of 42 HP, maybe you just keep the 36. You just up the damage a little bit. 6 HP can matter. I mean, that might be a full attack, to be honest, so it's 1 less attack per person, which can really snowball. I hope you enjoy this video. I'm going to have a part 4-ish. Not really. I'm going to name it something different, but it's going to be a continuation on the same idea. We're going to talk about, in another video as well, how advantage and disadvantage can really affect dice roll, something to keep in your mind. as well how to really make a single enemy be problematic. Now, in my personal experience, I don't like having just a pure single enemy. There's too many spells, conditions, and other stuff in D&D that can really dumpster a single enemy in D&D. So I don't like to ever just run one monster. They never usually make it past turns 2 to 3. Unless they are wickedly strong. And at that point, it's a matter of dice roll at times. So we'll talk about that in another video. But we went from level 1 to level 9. I showed you ways you can increase damage, decrease damage. And once again, the stats never changed. You can keep the strength at 11. Dex would technically be an 18 at a +4 now. Con, you can keep at 0. If you want, you can make that a +4 as well, or +3 to mimic HP. Up to you. Just make it easy to remember. If I was to change the con, I'd just make it a +4. Why? It's the same as the dex then. I just remember, hey, dex and con, they're +4 to saves. And I wouldn't change it. Wisdom, I wouldn't change it because they already get advantage against charmed or frightened. And charisma is a straight roll. You know what I mean? I would keep as many straight rolls as possible and keep your attacks and all that stuff pretty simple for your grunt units. Bigger, badder units, you can take some of the similar ideas, and if they are stronger, most likely you won't have to change their stats, just maybe change their chance to hit. For example, if you want to pull out a challenge 3, but only have +6 to hit, you're like, well, this is my main enemy. You might actually want to give them a +8 or +9 then. You know, like, if you want them to be the main danger, but you like that archetype, sometimes just changing the chance to hit massively changes the deadliness of a monster. Maybe they have Brute, and now they can actually use those 2 D10s +3 or something. You know what I mean? +5 to hit with 2 D10s +4, painful. +8 with 2 D10s +4 starts to become problematic, especially if they have multi-attack. So those are things to consider on how much you want to increase your attack modifier, your damage modifier, their generic HP, even though it may not follow the con. Increase AC where you want to. You can just always say it's their natural thick hide. There's a lot of ways as a DM you can just say, hey, I balanced this monster for this fight. Don't get all the technicals. I like you said, I balanced it for this fight. Because if you start changing all the stats, it can get a little crazy. And if they start saving a lot of saving throws or like ability checks, your party could quickly start losing. Thank you for watching. I hope you liked this video. Like I said, I'm hoping to have the pictures attached or available on the side of the screen. And leave any comments down below if you're trying to figure out how to bring up a single monster. I will eventually release a video on that. Thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe below and leave a comment.